Welcome back, everyone. This is part 17 on what if the Transformers were in high school. DXD. I do not own the Transformers and DXD or any of the characters in this video. Chapter 8. 2 miles from the Borealis Basin, Mars. 12:37 p.m. TST Tokyo Standard Time. Your choice. Evil plots. Astro Train was not a happy camper. He was ordered to oversee ongoing investigations upon the Martian surface for any further clues to the Decepticon ship that crashed on Earth. Considering that something clearly odd was going on with how the part that was discovered on Mars. It was from the part of the ship that is quite durable and could only be broken off by the impact of a planetary object. Shockwave theorized that either the crashed ship was actually on Mars, or it was part of an odd and rare but still feasibly possible phenomenon known to Cybertronians as astro rebound impact, where a ship, even under the influence of gravity, could effectively bounce off a planet's surface like a rubber ball and rebound back into space. Astro Train knew the phenomenon well and noted that a myriad of conditions had to be met for such a thing to even be possible. He was aware that, based on little bits of information already gathered, Mars fit the planetary needs for the phenomenon to happen perfectly. Mars was small enough for gravity to allow the event in question to happen, and the nearby Borealis Basin, as the humans call the massive and uncharacteristically smooth surface of Mars's northern hemisphere, actually hid the details of the impact well. The triple changer remarked that it was likely thanks to Mars' seismic activity and weather over millions of years, pretty much sent all the obvious evidence to oblivion. But Shockwave wants all available evidence, on Lord Megatron's orders, to try and accurately pinpoint where the ship likely crashed, on Earth or Mars. And the shuttle or steam engine hybrid knew better than to cross either of them. Put your backs into it, he shouted as the Decepticons, he was tasked to oversee in multiple ways, dug the Martian soil further. Lord Megatron will have your sparks if Shockwave doesn't get the information he needs. Those gem magic books are still being very uncooperative with us. So our master is on a very short fuse with any more bad news. He pressed his ear and asked, "Hey Deluge, have you finished gathering that atmospheric and orbital data yet?" He heard the Decepticon named Deluge reply through the comlink. "No, since you asked for the 65th time in the past 20 cycles. Keep asking and we'll never get it done. You giant piece of scrap." Astro Train flinched as the con snapped quite harshly. If Deluge's data wasn't so valuable, he would have fried his circuits for that response. That sensation was even worse for Astro Train, because Deluge knew he was too valuable to offline, and took as many opportunities to verbally assault his fellow Decepticons. The gray and purple Decepticon sighed as he replied, "Copy that. Over and out." Astro Train then decided to patrol the area, joined by 2 well-known Decepticons, Skywarp and Bludgeon. They were unaware that they were being spied on just outside of their sensors. The onlookers were the Mars probe, Opportunity, the Autobots Springer, Cosmos, Blaster, Rewind, and Ramhorn, and in spacesuits, the Saiyans Goku and Vegeta, the superhero Quake, and finally, a Pokémon called Minior. NASA was made aware of the whole deal with the Autobots and Decepticons and was sworn to secrecy about it by the collective governments of the world in exchange for the Autobots offering a few technological upgrades to improve space exploration. So Opportunity was offered to help monitor the Decepticon activity on Mars after Cosmos and Blaster upgraded. Then it would normally, and defend itself from the Decepticons. Vegeta looked and said with frustration building, "Why the hell are we just observing those idiots instead of destroying them?" Springer answered quietly while moving his pointing finger in a shushing motion, "Because, Your Majesty, they outnumber us, outgun us." Then it would normally, and defend itself from the Decepticons. Vegeta looked and said with frustration building, "Why the hell are we just observing those idiots instead of destroying them?" Springer answered quietly while moving his pointing finger in a shushing motion, "Because, Your Majesty, they outnumber us, outgun us. One of them is our spy on the inside, and we need to find that Decepticon ship first if that message is any indicator of this reality's Decepticons' ideals," Quake remarked. "I agree that Megatron from that message seems more like an Autobot to us than the Decepticons we know." The Minior let out a little chirp in agreement. Vegeta sighed as Goku said, "Hopefully we find out what we need soon because I'm getting really hungry and I'm getting tired of eating that astronaut food." Vegeta let out a single chuckle as he remarked, "For once, I agree with Kokoro." Blaster then said, "For now, Let's return to Vales Marineris and regroup with Jammer and Kara. Hopefully, our signal blockers should hold out until we return to base. That last dust storm did some damage to them. Rewind jabbed. I, for one, do not want to be swarmed by Decepticons. Like Springer said at the Battle of New Orktown, I've got better things to do tonight than die, says you. Vegeta said as they began heading for the massive canyon. I welcome a full confrontation instead of sneaking around any time. And Kokoro agrees with me on that front. Yeah, Goku admitted as Cosmos transformed and airlifted the opportunity probe. I want to fight them too, but as Springer said, they have us outnumbered with those robots that Eggman guy built, Quake remarked as she hopped into Springer's cockpit. I still can't figure out how he gets the material in time to build so many on such short notice. Springer replied, Sonic said that is a question he asks himself, and figures he doesn't want to know the answer. The group headed for their hidden base in the largest canyon in the solar system, miraculously lucky with how they were left completely undetected by the Decepticons. Astro Train was hailed over by one of the excavation crew, and was pleasantly surprised by the discovery of copious amounts of raw, unrefined energon deposits under the Martian surface. A bit of good news for Megatron. Astro Train smirked as he picked up an energon chunk. If this is what unrefined energon looks like on Mars, then there's more than enough to grant all of us the ability to annihilate those accursed Autobots and their organic and divine allies. Megatron would definitely be pleased once the news reached his ears and figured it will be soon until he forces the Autobots into a trap. Meanwhile, at the same time, back at the Phoenix territory of the underworld, your choice. Thomas, Maria, what the heck are you two doing here? Sean shouted loud enough to make a few of the Autobots jolt and back off from him and Rosa. The boy looked ready to cry as he replied, much like any scared child. Hi Dad, Mom didn't expect you to be here. Ha 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 ha. Issy and the others had slack jaws when they heard the little 5-year-old call Sean Dad and Rosa Mom. And then it made them curious about the little girl beside Thomas, clinging to him closely. She didn't look like she was related to either Rosa and Sean, and it could be possible she is their daughter through adoption. But something told the teens that wasn't the case. Rosa's face was just as furious as Sean's as she addressed the young girl. Did you know? You could have killed yourselves with that stunt you just pulled. You two are grounded. No, wait. For what you two just did, you wish you were just grounded for pulling such a reckless stunt. The girl they correctly deduced as being named Maria replied quite scared. I'm sorry, Mr. Hashimoto. Mrs. Hashimoto, I know we did a bad thing. Optimus Prime watched this unfold, ignoring the pain he felt, and said to the two, Sean, Rosa, they're just children. I am not as familiar with parenting as I should, but I can tell that you are being really harsh with them. Rosa looked beside her on the ground, and then boldly threw one of Wheeljack's busted firearms at the Autobot leader's head with enough force to knock him on his back, slightly freaking out some of the ORC members at the act. The sound of the weapon connecting with Prime's metal skull sounded like it hurt, even for a being whose skin was made of space metal. Rosa snapped harshly at Optimus. You stay out of this, Prime. We're responsible for their well-being. You have no say in this, especially if our son is involved. Izzy cowered behind Riaz in response to Rosa's outburst towards Optimus. He's heard that she had a ferocity that made Sean afraid of her. Hell, this was the Pokemon trainer who's bold enough to provoke Megatron and fight gods. Drift walked up to the natives of this reality and said indirectly, humanity often says an amusing proverb that best describes this. Heaven hath no fury like a mother scorned, I believe it goes. Riaz looked at Drift for a few seconds, then replied to the Autobot samurai, yeah. I know that sometimes, my own mother frightens my father when she's in a bad mood. Sometimes, First Aid looked over Issy and Kaiba as he said, well, it might take a minute or two for those two to lecture the kids, based on my observations on human behavior. So I might as well study these Phoenix tears and how they affect the regenerative factors in cells. The teens agreed and relaxed now that the attack was over. So they talked it over as Sean and Rosa lectured the children. Optimus was helped back up to a sitting position by Ratchet and Windblade. Despite their talks with each other and with some of the Autobots, Ria's Gremory couldn't keep her eyes off the two children. There was something curious about them, and the other teens noticed too. Sean and Rosa were absolutely furious at the little boy and little girl as they cowered at the pair lecturing them quite harshly. For what seems like a minute, the two Pokemon trainers kept talking to the pair of children, telling them why it was stupid to stow away in Skylinks. It really didn't help Skylinks' case, as the Autobot lieutenant knew he'll be next on the chopping block after Twilight Sparkle was quite familiar with the personal lives of the two Pokemon trainers and helpfully filled them in on what she was told by the pair. Your choice, children. Thomas was the couple's second son, who had a twin sister who was a few minutes older and was very smart for her age. Sean and Rosa have had 5 children, and of those 5, their eldest son and said son's close friend was the only one aware of this whole deal of realities and fictional characters existing in real life. Thomas was a genuinely kind boy like his older brother, which did make the two quite popular, even among girls older than them. Something Riaz was interested in seeing if he was that kind. Despite his kindness, Thomas seems to be a trouble magnet, as all kinds of things happen that put him in danger without his intention. He was also really close with his best friend Maria. Maria was the only daughter of 2 very close family friends of Sean and Rosa. Her parents worked jobs that left the little girl alone since 3 months ago for extended periods of time. Sean and Rosa offered to let Maria stay with their family, as the two cared for her as if she was their daughter. Maria's closeness to Thomas was a result of the young girl having feelings for Thomas, especially because of his kind behavior. She's also got quite a strong, almost dominating personality and quite a temper, but is generally well behaved thanks to both her parents and her best friend's parents. Riaz was quite surprised the boy was the Pokemon trainer pair's second son, mostly because, despite their ages in the 20s, the pair could pass off convincingly as teenagers themselves, and the girl was a close friend of their family. Akano, Asia, Zenobia, and Irina couldn't keep their eyes off of the 2 children. All they were seeing is, to put it bluntly, a fantasy land only a 2-year-old could be exposed to. It didn't help that Thomas and Maria were absolutely, irresistibly adorable, especially when the 2 were together. The high schoolers had their thoughts refocused on the now at Sean angrily asking his son and his son's friend, "And how did you even get inside Skylinks to stow away in the first place?" Thomas looked ready to cry in guilt, but his friend beat him to the punch. Maria bawled while crying waterfalls. Wah ha 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 ha. It's my fault. I'm sorry. Cries louder. Wah ha ha ha. We just followed a bunch of pixies, and they told us where to find Tommy's daddy and mommy. Izzy thought that Maria was making up pixies to avoid getting into deeper trouble, but Sean's expression changed from his angry face to a more surprised expression, and then a contemplative one. Rosa, however, still in mom mode, was still really furious. She had a look that Izzy and Ria's new mothers make when their children confess their wrongdoings. Lake Cavern, Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. Optimus noticed how upset Maria is, and he felt that he needed to help her. He tried to get up after Ratchet with help from Windblade, and in 903 sat him down again to resume his first aid on his old friend. Sean saw that, and then said, "Optimus, you don't need to worry about these 2 anymore. And that's because I now know who was responsible for this unexpected circumstance." Rosa looked at her husband with a confused expression shared by the entire Gremory peerage as Sean said, "All right, you 3. Mind telling me why you thought it would be a good idea to bring my son and his best friend into a multiversal conflict?" 3 lights suddenly appeared from Skylinks' shuttle body and floated to Sean. The lights vanished and were replaced by a trio of similar-looking creatures that floated and had 2 tails. Optimus Prime noticed the trio of peculiar creatures and said, "Masters Uxie, Mesprit, and Azelf, were you really responsible for bringing these children here?" Izzy noticed how Optimus' tone sounded stern and confused at the same time, as he addressed the beings called Uxie, Mesprit, and Azelf. Riaz immediately recognized them as a trio of legendary Pokemon that debuted in her personal favorite Pokemon games, Diamond version and Pearl version. She was caught off guard by how adorable they were in real life from the games, and she tried to hide it. Uxie, a being with a yellow turban-like head, spoke to the Autobot leader. "Yes, we were advised to do so." Optimus' tone veered straight to that of sternness as he began to lecture the 3 Pokemon. "Do you realize how much harm you put them in? This is no, we were fully aware, and resisted as much as possible." The cyan-headed Azelf interrupted, "But this was an order from the very top." Rosa barked, "I swear if Palkia thinks she can rope my children, you misunderstand." Mesprit explained, the pink-headed Pokemon interrupting Rosa. "Palkia is our sister. But she wasn't the one who told us to do the deed. It was the one who our sister frequently calls the Big G. He said that fate will turn for the better for all of you if the young Thomas Hashimoto and Maria Katensaki are present with Optimus Prime's team. If it helps. We were also ordered to ensure no harm comes to the 2. Rosa looked pissed, pissed enough to hurt the next living thing next to her. It was scary to behold, enough so for Issy to make him cower behind Riaz like a frightened 2-year-old. Rosa mumbled to herself for a short while, which Issy figured were very harsh and mean things that popped into her mind. The female trainer said to herself in response, still looking ready to strangle someone, "Oh ho ho. If God thinks he can put my son, or any of my children or their friends in mortal peril." The woman took a deep breath and let out an exasperated sigh as she admitted to herself, "Sigh, he's lucky he's an omnipotent being that transcends reality, or he would have been so dead right now. Your choice." Conversations? Ironhide rubbed the back of his head and said, "Well, if the top dog of existence says so, guess there's nothing we can do about it. No arguments there." Chromia added as she lovingly handed Ironhide one of his arm-mounted cannons lost during the fight. Thomas and Maria were looking up at the Transformers with shock and awe, the little girl saying to her best friend, "Hey Tommy, are we really seeing those Transformers guys? Are they real?" Thomas replied, "Yeah. I know we aren't dreaming. These guys are all real." Thomas and Maria then glanced over to their left and had eyes like a child meeting their favorite television character in person. The two children saw a few of the Avengers, Captain America, Spider-Man, Hulk, and Iron Man walking in their direction. Ria's Gremory and the other girls felt their hearts go squish, as they would say when they saw the two children walk up to the four superheroes like one walks up to a mascot in a theme park. So. This is Thomas Hashimoto and his best friend, Maria Katensaki, Spider-Man remarked as he placed his hands on his knees. "Got to admit, they're just as you described them, Rosa." The two little kids had bug eyes when the greatest superhero of all knew who they were, and Maria stuttered, "You know who we are, Mr. Spider-Man. Just Spider-Man, please," the web-slinger said as he petted the two on their heads. "Don't worry about it. Mr. Spider-Man would be my father if he was in the superhero business. Thomas' mom told us about you all, and it's a pleasure to meet you two for the first time." Spider-Man rubbed his head and chuckled as he quipped, "Although, I just wish we could have been introduced under better circumstances, without the place being a dumpster wreck." Thomas and Maria laughed as the boy said, "He's definitely the real Spider-Man." Only the real Spider-Man could say something so funny. Issy saw the two of them smile as they were getting introduced to all the new faces, but when he looked at Riaz, he saw her completely transfixed on the two children. The redhead had a look that told Issy that Riaz was completely enamored by the two, for some reason. "Okay, you two," Twilight said as she placed her hands on their backs. "Let's give everyone space to recover. We've been under a lot of stress for the past few hours. Is that all right?" Thomas and Maria complied, as they both said respectfully to the alicorn in a human disguise, "Okay, Andy Twilight, we'll leave them alone." Issy was in full alert if his outburst was any indicator. "Andy Twilight." Twilight heard Issy and explained, "That's just what Thomas and his siblings call me. I'm a close family friend. I'm not his actual aunt," Akano said in response. "Oh, is that why? It makes sense to me now." Koneko soon looked at the three mini-cons who were stowed away with the two children, and asked, "Well, who are they?" Twilight's curiosity piqued, and her attention shifted to the trio of mini-transformers. She replied, "Huh? I don't know. This is the first I've seen a trio of mini-cons like them, and I'm quite familiar with most of the Autobots. You wouldn't know about them, Twilight, because you haven't met them yet," Sean said as he walked to the group. Akano asked, "Why is that so?" Sean sat down with his son sitting beside him, and explained, "Those three are recent acquisitions from the colony of Micron. Their names are Sonar, the Shuttle, Stormjet, the Mini Concorde, and their mini Boeing leader, Runaway. They're a weaponizer trio that can merge into a powerful sword called the Cyber Caliber. They spend a great deal of time completely isolated from virtually any living being until a month ago. So, they speak only in their native tongue from the colony world of Micron." "Why were they in isolation?" Asia asked, quite concerned that it sounded like that the three bots were alone for thousands of years. Sean answered, "That's a bit of a long story from what I've been told. But to summarize it, Sonar, Stormjet, and Runaway were subjected to horrible experiments by their own people in service to the Decepticons, by turning them into a weapon based on their genetic compatibility. They were meant to be used by Megatron and stripped of all their personality to become a mindless tool for killing until one bot took pity on them and allowed them to escape in a stasis ship that made the cons think the trio were lost in space. They're a little hard to get along with." Riaz was quite disturbed by this summary of the air defense team, to where she could only say, "How horrible." Irina replied, "Ah, The poor little mini-cons. Twilight took the information in and said to her friend, I appreciate the information. Maybe I can help open up their sparks to friendship. Rosa brushed the dust out of Maria's hair with her fingers, and lightly chuckled as she replied quickly, Oh no, Twilight, that's not the problem. Sonar, Stormjet, and Runaway have no problem with making friends. The real problem is that they could only speak in an ancient language that hasn't been heard by the Transformers since the Sahara was a wetland beach, and sheep ate meat. Oh, Twilight remarked with a bit of a dumbfounded expression that makes it where, effectively, they're speaking a rarely heard language that may very well be a dead language, in a way. Rosa shrugged as she patted Maria's clothes to rid the dust that got on the little girl. Asia and a few others, mostly Thomas, Maria, Akano, Koneko, and Gasper, walked over to meet the three little robots, but waited to talk to them after Optimus lectured the three weaponizers over stowing away in Skylinks. Izzy groaned as his teacher to fight Transformers, and Kaiba helped him up so he could recover at his home. Sean chuckled a little as he said, Despite your horrendous loss, you can definitely consider surviving against the likes of Six at a victory. Before we really tried to use teamwork a month before we ended up in your reality. Hudu. There were only 3 individuals who survived their encounters with Sixit, Irina asked, with her curiosity piqued. Who are they? They must be really skilled to survive a confrontation with that monster. 2 of them were sheer dumb luck. And they were Donald Duck and Windcharger. The one who didn't survive on dumb luck was the Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff. Sean replied as they walked to a teleportation ring Surzix set up for them. Yeah, we were very fortunate that First Aid had studied enough about the human anatomy to reconnect Nat's severed nerves when she distracted Sixit from taking a case of vibranium. Captain America added as he walked up with a large medical kit and handed it to Koneko. Optimus was close by and he said once he noticed the children and a couple of young adults, We will stay here and help with the reconstruction and rescue efforts. Go to your home and recover from your injuries before you do anything else. The Air Defense Team, Falsh's team, and Twilight will accompany you to help safeguard you from another attempt on Issy Hudu's life. Rias bowed as she replied over said named Minicon loudly complaining in the background. Thank you for the assistance, Optimus Prime. We definitely need it if Sixit is like any other assassin, Twilight added. I don't know about that. Based on what I gather, Sixit is too skilled to simply have you guys attempt to fight him. If he wanted to kill Issy, he almost certainly would have done so already, and we would be none the wiser. No, if anything. Everyone got tense as Twilight finished her thoughts. He was testing Issy for something they need you alive for. Issy railed at that. Then why the hell did he leave me to die from blood loss? Sean gave his input. First Aid and Ratchet both said that, despite the large wound you received, it was thin and easily recoverable with Asia's healing abilities. Optimus thought about it, then said, if that's the case, then I'll have Drift, Arcee, and Bumblebee patrol around your home and school in Kuo Town. They headed to Surzix as he offered to take them to Issy's home, unaware of the fact that someone was watching them, and said to themselves, Sixit definitely lives up to his skill if he can make a minor injury on the fleshlings look fatal, and not kill them. Lord Megatron is going to be pleased, but for now, I need to maintain my guys as a filthy Autobot. For now,